Hi guys, I'm hoping we've got a full house here. Welcome to our very first Plymouth Science Park webinar. Um, we hope that this will be a relaxed and informative half an hour, and I hope you remember to all make a cup of tea or coffee. I would very much, absolutely delighted to welcome Teresa, who is Chief Exec of Paradigm Human Performance. They moved down from Monmouth sort of start of last summer, started initially in the formation zone and rapidly expanded into the lower ground floor of the phase 2 building. So Paradigm Human Performance, absolutely sort of first class leading experts in sort of human and operational performance. And we're really looking forward to hearing Teresa over the next sort of 15 to 20 minutes. So over to you, Teresa.
Thanks very much, Faye. Thank you. And hello, everyone. Hopefully, if I haven't met you already in the canteen or in the corridor, then hopefully I will do when we're all back at work, hopefully, which won't be too far away. So yeah, my name's Teresa and I am the CEO and founder of Paradigm. We started our business, myself and my husband, Mick. We started Paradigm on the 30th of March, 2017. Yeah, originally we were based in Monmouth, but as a Plymouth girl, born and bred, I was very keen to take the opportunity of running my own business to move back to my hometown to be close to family and friends, and so hence we're here at the Science Park. When I was asked to put a presentation together, what I wanted to do was kind of talk about what we do as an organisation and how we have been working with our clients during the COVID pandemic to try and help them in terms of our content and our product and what are the risks that they're faced with now, which perhaps differed and changed to what would be business as usual. So I'm going to share some of that with you today. However, what I will say is that our remit with our clients globally is fairly vast, from occupational health and safety management through to well-being and resilience, human error, high reliability principles organizations and high performing teams. And particularly what we focus on is something that we call people-centered operational excellence. So again, I'm just going to really scratch the surface of some of the stuff we do today and put it in the context of what we're doing during COVID. But if we can help you in any way after the call, then Faye and the team have our contact details, and we'd be delighted to help and support you if we can. So one of the things that we talk a lot about at Paradigm is about human error, and human error can have potentially significant consequences on our operations, particularly in the areas that we work in, which tend to be high hazard, heavy industry or sort of healthcare environments. So we work around nuclear generation, obviously healthcare, primary care and secondary care. We operate in oil and gas, in power generation, construction, and so those sort of heavy industries that rely on people doing the right thing at the right time. The dichotomy of that is that unfortunately people are fallible and we're not hardwired like robots, and so therefore we have a tendency to make errors. And the majority of us, when we make those errors, they're insignificant. They don't have a massive impact on our lives, on our day, or even on the organisation that we work for. But if you can imagine, in those sort of industries that we've talked about there, the potential of human error, can be vast. So this is one of the models that we use, and we call this the WITH model, and you can probably, there's a clue in the 4 categories there on the table, and we call it the WITH model because we talk about working with error precursors. So in a nutshell here, what I'm talking about is when we are looking at work, any tasks or activities that our people are involved in, when you have a number of these factors present in the work environment, in the task, then the likelihood of error increases exponentially. Okay, so just in usual, normal, everyday operations, if you're looking at the work environment and you start to see some of these things, you know, we're working at height in confined spaces, or hot work permits are out, or we're working with sensitive equipment, those kind of things. If you can start ticking off this list and thinking, yeah, there are some of these factors that are present or in play today when our people go to work, you know that there's a risk that their, what we would call their error rate, is going to increase. And so we need to go back to our good risk management philosophy and concepts there, and start to increase the number of control mechanisms that we have in place to try and prevent the consequences of human error, or reduce them. So if that's normal operational activities where these things increase propensity for error, you can imagine during a crisis such as such as COVID-19, that the likelihood of those errors being made is again increased even further, because people are working outside of their normal environment. They're not in their usual workplace. They're probably not doing their normal tasks or activities. And so we need to think about the additional error precursors that are in play for our people, and then obviously understand the consequences of that. On over the last few weeks is really talking about individual capability, and so really focusing there on column 2 on the tape. Sorry, just too far forward there. If I can get my slides back. Really concentrating on box 2 there, individual capability. Obviously tiredness or illness. So we've got people who are coming in and out of COVID who may not necessarily, they're not sure whether it's COVID they've got, or you know, if there's just some other sort of illness. Our attitude and our behaviours around work can change at the moment. And physical limitations are really important. So even just down to the basics, like, you know, display screen equipment and things like that, how we've set our people up to work from home. And one of the big concerns that we've been sharing with our clients is, you know, we've got clients who literally have put thousands of people working from their homes in a period of 2 weeks. So they've gone from fully operational in a facility to working from home. And of course, we don't for 1 minute believe that, you know, display screen equipment assessments have been done, and so on and so forth. So again, one of the things we need to be mindful of as a result of this period of having people working from home is, are we going to get a glut in a minute of musculoskeletal disorder type claims and things like this? So again, these are the things that we need to be thinking of, that can increase our propensity for error for our workers, which ultimately can result in them having accidents, or can result in an interruption to the mission of our business. So again, what I've just said to Faye when we were planning for the session this morning, these models, they're available, and more than happy to email them out, or I can get them to Faye. If any of you want any of this to refer to, then please do let us know. It's freely available to you. This is the other model that we do a lot of work, and this model is called the Organisational Drift model. And basically, this is what all of our work as paradigm is centred around. And I want to take the bulk of this sort of time to talk you through this model. So as you can see, what we've got basically here is a graph. The vertical axis is the way we do things around here. You could call that a level of maturity. And along the bottom axis there, we've got a time scale. Drawing your attention to the very top of this model, what you can see up there where it says policies, procedures, rules, etc. Those are the things that we do as management, as leaders of our organisation, either because we morally have to do it, we legally have to do it, or because it's, you know, the right thing to do. We're working with the equipment and the kit and the deliverables that we do in our organisations. We have to set our standards and our expectations as management, so that people inside of our organisation know what we expect of them when they come to work. And the way traditionally we do that in most organisations is through documentation such as these things here. Now, what we do is we write this stuff, we try and get it as accurate as we can, and then we communicate it to our staff, anticipating that that is what they will do when they go out into the field, whatever the field might look like in your particular business, and do. So as management, it's another way of looking at this is to think about this as our insurance policy if things go wrong, and also our defence if we ended up in a court of law, God forbid, or anything else. So very often when we write these things, we write them from the perspective of this is to communicate information to our employees, but then in hindsight, we often need them to act as our defence or our insurance policy as well. And sometimes they don't always, they're not always written with that other angle in mind. So we set out our stall anyway, and that creates what you can see there, which is this blue line, which we call work as imagined. And then, as you can see in the pink right in there, what we do is we spend a lot of money, time, effort and resource into measuring how effective those arrangements are. So the things like the audits, the inspections, the safety tours, our profit and loss accounts, etc., is really a stress test that says, is all of this structure that we've set up for our people, is it effective? Is it doing the job we designed it to do? Is it managing our risk adequately? Or do we need to tweak it? And inevitably, you will know as business leaders that the majority of the time when we do these things, we find ourselves as an organisation wanting, because the audits tell us that we've got non-conforming products. Our inspections tell us that people aren't necessarily following the procedures. Our safety tours tell us that housekeeping maybe isn't as good as it could be. Our profit and loss accounts will certainly at times like this will be telling us a lot about our organisations, and so on and so forth. So whenever we measure the structure, we get some feedback from the system that says we could be doing better. And if you take that to the extreme, what we do here, the drift model shows this other line that hopefully you can see it there, which is this green dotted line, which we call work as done. So if you like, that's, the blue line is imaginary and the green line is reality. So in everyday operations, what we know is that our workers are what we call minding the gap between work as done and work as imagined. Okay, so if I give you a very simple basic explanation or an example of this might be, where we've got speed limits, where we drive to work, and every day we commute into the office, maybe here at Plymouth Science Park or wherever, and very often the majority of us probably at some point or another during that journey will not be sticking to all of the rules of the road, for example. And we'll be doing that for a number of reasons. It's because we know we've got to get to work. Maybe we've got other competing priorities in our mind. Maybe we've left home a bit late. So you vary the way that you're driving. And so therefore, if you take the highway code as work as imagined and your actual journey to work this morning as work as done, and you see that difference, you can understand what we talk to our clients around there is actually people manage the drift. And they do that through varying their approach to make sure that they achieve exactly what we measure them for, and that's successful outcomes. And then as you can see in the red writing a little bit further down, why do our workers have to mind the gap? And there's all of those sort of answers that we would typically see: inadequate procedures, unclear commands, conflicting objectives, and poor leadership or lacking reinforcement of standards, etc., etc. So there are a number of reasons that we end up in this continuous loop of trying to set a standard, measuring the effectiveness of the standard, and then actually knowing that the standard is wanting and really almost turning a blind eye, even if it's unwittingly, to the fact that our workers make up the gap between perfection, and imperfection in our organisations. So this kind of phenomenon is happening in every business every day. So if I was to come and work with any of you today, and we went out into whatever your particular field is or your place of work, and we observed some of your workers working, the chances are we would see a number of this. We would see workers done in action. We'd be able to go and see where the procedure isn't being followed, the risk assessment wasn't quite adequate, etc., etc. So the reason that this is really important and why I wanted to share this as part of this conversation today is because if this is happening during our normal, regular operational activities, where our workers are minding the drift anyway, they're always minding the gap and getting the job done, achieving those successful outcomes. Can you imagine what happens when you suddenly change work for our people? That drift that we may know about, we may have a really good handle on some of this drift and we may be living with it, like the speeding, you know, multi-drop delivery drivers or whatever it may be. But when we suddenly put people into unusual work environments, then actually this drift again increases exponentially. The reason this is so important is A, because our current risk assessments or our risk management protocols may not be covering some of this stuff that we could see on a day-to-day basis, but it pretty much will not be covering the exacerbated drift that we'll be seeing because our people are now, you know, afraid, they're maybe working from home, they're maybe furloughed, therefore they're under pressure, and so on and so forth. And so what happens over a period of time, as you can see when you look at that green dotted line, work as done becomes what we call normalized. So suddenly we take these incremental steps away from work as imagined, and then one day we can't actually remember what work as imagined looked like because this green line is normal for us now. And that's a phenomenon that we call the normalization of deviance. Which again, I don't want to go into too much. It's not a science lesson or anything like that. But again, hopefully you can understand that in layman's terms, the further you veer off the path of standards and excellence that you're looking for, suddenly that becomes your new normal. Now, our big concern as a human performance organisation is that during the COVID-19 pandemic, what is going to happen is that normalization of deviance is going to be much increased compared to where we have normally been working with our existing clients. So what does this boil down to? In layman's terms, what I really want to share with you, the reason I'm sharing this model is because what we need to do as organizations at the moment, in order to manage our operational performance, is to really be thinking about first principles when it comes to managing our operations. And I'm not just talking about health and safety and well-being, I'm talking about profitability, productivity, stakeholder engagement, etc., etc. And the first principles that I really want to get everyone focused around at the moment is assessing and managing risks. And I think I'm hopeful that this set of questions might help you to prompt some different thinking about the way that you are managing the operations of your business today. And so again, this is a set of questions to just really challenge your current thinking. Are you actually taking a step back from your business long enough to look at it and go, what are the different risks and how are we managing those risks? Because very often certainly as small business owners, we ourselves are absolutely guilty of this at the moment. We're fighting fires. We're constantly fighting fires. We're trying to identify how we can continue to bring the revenue in and provide value to our clients. And I think really this week, we've almost had a realization that actually this is, apart from what we've done, there's probably very little else we can do. And we have to learn to be okay with that. Because by continuing to look for ways to continue with our business, potentially we're increasing the risks to our people and to our customers ultimately. So ask yourself some of these questions. Has work changed fundamentally for our people? And have you assessed those new or additional risks? And have you discussed them with your people? So again, we have a legal requirement if you employ more than 5 people to formally record significant risks to your organisation and your people, and to document how you'll mitigate and control those risks. Have you reviewed those things if you fall into that category? Have you still got adequate arrangements or controls in place to manage those risks? DSE, display screen equipment regulations, is just one that it is probably immediately springs to mind, because as I say, that's one of the things that our clients have been dealing with, taking a whole, 6,000 people call centre and then setting them up for working from home. Certainly we're seeing that at Plymouth Science Park. I mean, the reception services that we're getting here are just incredible at the moment. But when you go to the door at the reception, you can see that the ladies and the gents are working from their homes. Yes, I know that Plymouth Science Park have taken the steps to make sure they're set up adequately and properly. But again, how far have you gone to do that? Do you have the right people at work? So very often when a crisis like this comes along, our default position is to say, right, okay, so we'll keep all of the managers and all of the supervision working, and we'll furlough, or we'll send all of our staff home. And something that we talk to our clients about here is something called deference to expertise. So the experts in your business and the people who really understand how your business operates, and when I talk about that, I'm talking about the people in your organisation who understand where the organisational drift exists, are not always the supervisors and the managers. When you are looking at the risks to your business, make the decision about the people who you continue to employ and who continue to be active in your business based on their expertise about your operations, as opposed to their hierarchy in the organisation. And we've been helping a number of clients who have really had to revisit that once this went past 2 weeks, and they were starting to realise that this could be a longer term issue. Then they started to review who they had furloughed and who they needed to bring back into the workplace, because they needed the expertise as opposed to the management. What additional error precursors have been introduced, and we talked about that on my first slide there, so please do use that model. And where did we already have organisational drift? So where did we already have things going on in our organisation that were already on our radar that we needed to address really, but it was not a burning issue? Go and revisit those things now. And then really think about where you've introduced additional organisational drift because you've changed your operational focus, or you're maybe in firefighting or survival mode at the moment. And then I guess really what we're looking at is, what arrangements do we need to put into place to bring people back into work? So just from very basic logistics to, the really harsh stuff that, have we actually lost people? Are we going to be bringing the same people back to work that went off work? Have we lost people? Are we keeping in touch with families? And do we know how the COVID is impacting our people at the moment? Because we do have businesses to run. As hard as those conversations are for us to have, we have to have them. And we don't do ourselves any favors, and we don't do our workforce any favors if we go into this downward spiral. We have to be proactive to be able to provide employment for the people who are coming back to our business. So I just really wanted to leave you with these sort of 3 questions, and I think it kind of maybe captures a lot of what I've talked about here today. Just to ask yourself, and maybe on your next Zoom call or your webinar with your team, what is important to us right now? And certainly as Paradigm, we've really had to think about that more this week than we probably have in the last 3. So what is important to us right now? And what is important to us as Paradigm right now is actually surviving, protecting the little bit of cash that we've got in the bank, so that we can deliver the work that's been paid for in advance, and really not wasting that money or letting it slip through the net. What are we doing about those things? So once we've determined what is important to us right now, what are we doing about it? And it's really narrowing that focus at the moment so that we're really talking about and focusing on the most critical things that we need to be doing right now. And then really having a code eye review and saying, well, how well are we doing that really? What really has helped me, I think this week was going to a mentor of mine who has a very different perspective on business to me. I run a small business. My business is my passion. My people are so important to me that it's very easy for me to have too much of an emotional attachment to some of the decisions. And it was really kind of like revealing and really helpful yesterday to be challenged around some of my thinking as a business owner, as opposed to somebody whose previous mindset was, I'm responsible for all of these people. So again, if you don't feel that you've got the challenge within your own team, who can stand back and really be objective about what you're doing and how you're doing it, then go external. And what I will say to anyone at Plymouth Science Park, and again, we're not touting for business, that's not what this is about. If we can help any of you with this code eye review of your business, just some coaching, please shout out to us, and we will be more than happy to help you. So I just really wanted to finish up this. I hope I haven't overrun too much, but learning points, I think, from this section today are: error precursors increase the likelihood of unexpected outcomes. And those unexpected outcomes can range from an accident suffered by one or several employees to an unexpected outcome being a poor quality product leaving your manufacturing line, an order that doesn't get shipped on time. So an unexpected outcome or an unwanted outcome is a surprise, or anything that has the potential to impact the mission of your organization and to derail you. The number of error precursors increases when work changes. So again, use that list and talk to your people, talk to them and say, are you finding any more of these conditions are in play whilst, during this pandemic? Organisational drift exists in all work, and it becomes normalised over time. So look at what you had before COVID, and then look at what you've got now in terms of drift away from standards in your organisation, and then make a call on it. The rule there, I think it's just worth adding, is not to bring everything back to the blue line. Don't think that's the aim of the game here. It's really not. Because if you suddenly go out to all your workers right now and say, actually, these are the procedures, these are the rules, follow them or else, then you could be in a different type of trouble. Because typically, we know that our defenses that we put in place are flawed. So if people suddenly start to try to work with them, we can introduce all sorts of other risks. So you do need to do this very carefully. When novel circumstances arrive, such as the pandemic, deviance from work, as imagined, is exponentially increased, and we've talked about that. And we need to ask new questions about risk during these novel working conditions. So when we're not talking about our usual operational risks and hazards, we really need to be thinking outside of the box in terms of what other risks have we got. And there's a 4-box model. I haven't included it on here, but if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share it. But there's levels of consciousness. So around about, we know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know. And there's a 4-box model that is worth thinking about, which again, maybe worth me sharing with you. I'll email it to Faye, and you can maybe use that in some of your challenge meetings that you are undoubtedly having at the moment. I don't know what you might call them, but I'm sure you're having challenge meetings at the moment. And focus on what is important right now. Make sure everyone knows that that is your priority. That's what we should be focusing on at the moment. So if you've got a sales team out there selling, but actually you've got no production, then are you going to do yourself some damage in the long term by not fulfilling client requirements or whatever? So think about the things you're doing. Are they the most important things? Are they the right things? Does everyone know? Are you all pulling in the same direction? And think about this as a management, as an exercise in managing risk. And again, my final parting shot is, if we can help you with any of this at all over the next couple of days or weeks or months, where your neighbours, we're here, we would love to support you and help you, because I think it's so important that we all work together to get through this. And I don't think there is any silver bullet at the moment, but I can't wait to hear it if there is. So that's it from me. I'm going to hand back, I think, to Faye and Elle, who are going to take us through a question and answer period.
Thank you so much for that, Teresa. That was really interesting for people. I'm sure we'll have given lots of kind of helpful insight for now and as they start to plan for the future. We have had a couple of, I'm aware of the time, but we have had a couple of questions come in, so I think it'll be really good to cover them.
Yeah.
So someone has asked if you have any tips for how they can get their people to start talking about organisational drift.
Yes, yeah, that's a really good question actually, because you have to have a really good, open, transparent, and trusting organisational culture to encourage these conversations. A just culture, and where people feel empowered, and in fact, you know, that they feel it necessary to talk openly about the things that are different when they go to work. The best way that I can advise you to encourage your people to do that is to start to talk to them about drift in your role. So for example, you know, show them your vulnerability, and say, look, we're all humans, we are all fallible, we all make errors. As principle number one of human performance. And actually, here you go, these are some of the things that I'm having to do to get the job done at the moment. So I haven't got an office set up at home, so I'm actually sitting on the sofa. And actually, you know, my neck's starting to ache, and it's made me stop and think, wow, actually, you know, what are my people doing to manage this? So guys, what are you doing at the moment? So if you put yourself out there first and show your vulnerability, your people will respond to that. And if you haven't got the sort of culture where people currently feel empowered to do that, those are the really good, open, transparent conversations that you can start to have to start those little green shoots of conversation happening.
That's great. Thank you, Teresa. And if anyone's got any other questions, is there any way that they can get in contact with you directly?
Yeah, please do. So my email address is Teresa, Teresa, at paradigmhp.com. And paradigm is spelled paradigm, paradigmhp.com. Or you can give us a call on the Science Park number, or our direct number is 874954. And I'm in the office, and when I'm not in the office, the phone is diverted to my mobile. So there'll always be somebody here who can help you if you need some help, or as I say, if you would like some coaching or anything like that during this time, please give us a shout. We're here to help.
That's great.
Okay.
Okay, well, I think we're probably out of time now, aren't we? So I would just like to say thank you for joining all of us, everybody, and a massive thank you to Teresa for an excellent presentation. And just to remind you that same time next week, same place, we'll be online with Steve from Disruption Works, looking at chatbots and how much help they can be to your business in terms of managing Q&A and what have you. So I hope you can join us next week, and many thanks to all concerned. Okay.